this episode of the Significant Coaching Podcast, I sat down with Jeff Culver, head men's basketball coach at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, one of the top D2 coaches in the country. After a 5-21 record in his first season, Culver orchestrated the greatest turnaround in NCAA Division II history the next year with a 21-9 record, a trip to the RMAC Tournament Championship game, and the first berth in NCAA Division II National Tournament history for his Lions. He's continued to guide the Lions to additional great seasons as he begins his 13th season. We had a great conversation about the state of the game, and it was great fun hearing his story about being the only four-year coach in the country to recruit Derrick White. Derrick has had one of the best summers an athlete could ask for, as he was the starting point guard for the Boston Celtics NBA championship, then signed a 9-figure contract, and just to put a cherry on top, he made the U.S. Olympic team. At the time of the recording, Derrick and our U.S. men's team were on their way to what looks like another gold medal. I really enjoyed hearing Coach Culver's stories about the beginnings of Derrick's career and the celebration of what Derrick's hard work and commitment has done for him. Coach Culver and I had our first conversation over 10 years ago, not too long after he took the job at Colorado Springs. I loved his passion for teaching back then and respect and admire everything he's accomplished since. I'm thankful to call him a friend. I know you'll be as impressed as I am. Enjoy. Coach, all of us, we go decades sometimes coaching great kids and looking for that special talent. What does it mean to you to have really developed a young man that's gone on to make the NBA, has just won an NBA championship? What does that do for your soul and your spirit to see a kid that you really brought up from the high school level and see him play at such a high level now?
Yeah, it feels great. Every kid that comes through the program, you're trying to get the most out of them as a young man, not only basketball. And so to have someone come through and be such a great kid and easy to coach and just get so significantly better each year in the program, and then continue that trajectory moving forward and have success at this level, it's just been special to watch. I mean, we got a lot of guys doing a lot of great things after they graduate, but in the basketball world, obviously that's the pinnacle, right? Getting an NBA championship. So pretty cool. It's been great for everyone of us to come along for the ride in the UCS family.
That's fantastic. I'm really happy for all of you and really excited for Derrick. I remember, must have been his freshman year, I think I came down and saw you and watched one of your games. And if you've coached and played at the Division I level long enough, it doesn't take long to know when a kid has that special something. They just get everywhere faster. Do you remember seeing him in high school and remembering how you evaluated him?
First time I saw him was at Cherry Creek for a holiday tournament. And I don't think there was one thing that stood out. It was just a handful of things with him. He was out there making winning plays, both ends of the floor. And something that we always liked about Derrick that I think has him stand apart is his ability to make plays on and off the ball, not only offensively, but defensively. And for our system and playing in motion and everything, that's critical to be able to know what to do when the ball's not in your hands. And Derrick was such a good player offensively, both on and off the ball, but then defensively as well, just great instinct. So you saw some of that at the high school level. Everything was obviously a little bit watered down. His body's still growing. He's still figuring it out. But you saw that he was a winner. You saw that he had some of the basic skills down. You saw that the body was still growing. And you just saw that his instinct, his basketball IQ was really good. I guess that would be the one thing that stood out, was just his overall basketball IQ, ability to make plays.
That's great. That's really great. I work with high school kids all the time, and I have so many kids, just like you hear all the time, that their dream is to play Division I, just like I'm sure yours was and mine was. What do you see today in these kids in terms of their ability compared to their work ethic? Can you make yourself into a scholarship player and play at UCCS? Can you make yourself into that guy that can play at Boulder? Or does that really have to be innate? Does some of those things you have to be born with?
I think that's a good question. And I think I kind of land on both sides a bit because I've seen guys that maybe don't have the innate skills or talent level or size for position, but the work ethic is there. It helps if you have a jump shot. Let's face it, like you could be the hardest worker, but if you're lacking some of those Division I level size, skills, whatever, you got to be able to shoot the ball on top of working your tail off. But I have seen guys jump levels just based on work ethic. I mean, we've taken guys that are, maybe a lower level, lower D2 or D3 or whatever it may be, or lower NAI, but they've earned themselves a Division II scholarship because of their work ethic. And because you'll see that in the weight room then, when typically you're going to have a more mature physical kid, at least. Those are the type of kids, too, that are going to get their paperwork turned in on time. They're going to show up to practice early. They're going to stay late. And there's something to that. They're going to get something out of that. That can be a separator. And then ultimately, a kid like that is going to reach a ceiling. And where that ceiling is obviously depends on kid to kid. But I do think that some Division I levels where guys just have worked hard enough to overcome maybe a lack of size or lack of athleticism or lack of whatever it is that they were born with, and they figured it out. It's funny because the truly great ones are where you get both, because you're seeing a lot of kids in the NBA as well, and literally throughout Division I and even Division II, where they have the opposite, right? Where they have the potential and they may have the body type and the size and whatever it is checks the boxes, and everyone's going on potential, right? If you watched the draft last night and they're talking about we want teenagers, and they're worried about a 23-year-old Dalton Neck. And I remember those same worries about Derrick coming out in the draft, that it was a downside to his game, that he was a senior and fifth-year senior and he's mature and where's his ceiling at and everything like that. So, but you do see some of these guys that have the potential and then it never pans out. You see it all the time, and where they lack that work ethic. And then the truly great ones are the ones that got both, right? Where they got the work ethic, they're willing to put in all the extra hours, and they have the size for position, they have the length, they have all of the other God-given abilities as well.
Yeah, I just read somewhere that there were 9 Division III kids this year that have gotten into the portal and have signed Division III to Division I, which I was amazed by. And then you watch University of Connecticut baseball this year had a great run. I think they made it to the Elite Eight of the College World Series. And of their 40 some kids on their roster, 9 were Division III transfers, and 7 of those kids were playing big time minutes. So I think it says a lot about what you can do. If you've got some size, you've got some speed, you've got some ability, but if you've got that work ethic and you're willing to put the time in, what it can do for your future. And you're the prime example of that as a college coach. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you were the only coach that offered Derrick White a scholarship out of high school, weren't you?
Yeah, I think there was a junior college as well, but yeah, no one else. And a lot of it was just that the body's still developing. He's too skinny. What position is he? I think too often coaches fall into that too. Doesn't shoot it well enough to be a 2. His handles aren't tight enough to be a 1. He's not big enough to be a wing. And I remember telling Derrick on his visit and his family, I'm not sure where we're going to play you, but we do think you got a chance to play at this level. And I think that's sometimes people fall through the cracks for that reason too. And I think sometimes coaches want to be able to put them in a box. And I don't know. I think more and more people are thinking differently, hopefully, positionless basketball and everything. But on your case with the number of Division IIIs to Division I, to be honest with you, I think that's great. I think that's the benefit of the portal. I think there's a lot of talk about the negative aspects of the portal, but the opportunity for guys to level up or level down to get to a spot that could be a good fit, inherently at its core, the portal is doing that and allows for that to happen. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things about what's going on with the portal and unlimited transfers that are setting kids up for failure as well. But when Derrick came through, everybody's writing the stories out. There wasn't a whole lot of Division II to Division I success stories. When you had Duncan Robinson
Yeah.
through, and there wasn't a lot of Division III to Division I success stories. I think it's cool. You see some misses too, right? There's some guys that are going now. They're just chasing that biggest NIL check. So
Right.
even more are they landing at an appropriate level that they're actually going to be able to play and put up some numbers and set themselves up for post-college basketball. But I do think at least that opportunity is being given a lot more. And I think coaches are realizing, like, hey, just because this kid's a Division III kid or Division II kid doesn't mean he can't play. And we've got data that suggests otherwise. So I think that's pretty cool that at least these kids, if they're earning it, putting in the work and earning it, that they're getting those opportunities.
I was one of those coaches, and I probably still am to some extent, that really saw NIL and the portal. I saw it with so much negativity because I've always been a big believer that kids will do much better if they can be at a place for a long term and be with the same coaches, be with the same kids, learn a system, be able to really grow from long-term teaching and care about that college experience. I've had coaches like you that are starting to turn my mind a little bit to the value of the portal because of those things you just mentioned, the value of that NIL. How are you using the portal and the NIL a little bit differently than maybe you thought you would 5 years ago?
I guess first I'll talk to NIL. We're not using the NIL yet. That's something that I think it's obviously creeping to Division II. And I think there's I talked to a lot of Division II coaches some are trying to get it going, get their administration on board with it. Quite frankly, it's a funding, issue. And we have a lot of great boosters, alums that are doing some great things for our program, but we're still trying to get to a level where we feel like we've got all of our needs taken care of, all of our baseline needs, our scholarship levels, our recruiting budgets, our travel budgets, all of those budgets. We're trying to really enhance.
Assistant coaches.
Yeah. Get our assistant coaches paid
Staffing.
better.
Yeah.
Until we have that at an appropriate level, or at least what I deem to be an appropriate, let's contend at the national level, then it doesn't make sense to try to get a collective that's going to further enhance the athletic scholarships when we have so many other holes to fill still.
Right.
I think that you'll see that a lot and that's why the have-nots are really having a difficult time with this, and a lot of low-level Division I's that don't have it yet or are trying to, or it's at a low enough level where it's relatively insignificant. But the portal has changed things for sure. We've always relied on high school kids and we want to develop them. We want to make sure that we can keep them. And we're not going to try to run up a development team against a team of grown men transfers. That's not going to work out. So, but to me, there's, like anything in life, I think there's some balance to achieve somewhere. Like this year, for instance, we've got a class of 5 for this class of 24. 2 of them are high school kids. 3 of them are portal kids. And now what we were able to get with the portal this year, which was important to us, is that out of the 3 portal kids we got, 2 of them have 3 years left to play. 1 of them still has 4 years left to play.
That's fantastic.
That's
rare.
So back to your point about being able to, these kids are set up for success when they stay in one spot and they develop, and we want that as well. I think the danger of the portal lies where it's unlimited right now. So 4 years, 4 different schools, like, number one, are you really able to settle in anywhere and fall into a system and really get up to speed? And then are you going to graduate on time? Like, not everyone's getting drafted like Derrick and like Dalton. And so I think that I'm curious to see what happens with that too. When guys are exhausting their eligibility, they're not getting drafted by the NBA. And guess what? They still got 30 hours to complete to get a degree. So I think that could be tough, but we're using it. It's changed the timeline for recruiting quite a bit too. We used to get our work done early and maybe have 1 scholarship late. And now we're irresponsible if we don't hold at least a couple spots late to see what's going on in the portal. And like for this class, we're recruiting 25, but we're really not diving in until later. We just come back from the academic showcases in June And that's almost like the new start time for the next class,
It really
like
is.
they got
Yeah.
a live period now in May, and that helps. But even then, we're still, we still got kids on campus for 24. It's changed the whole timeline. I think that for high school kids, it's important for them and the families to really grasp that. And I think some are struggling with that, and they get nervous, right, when
Yeah.
they don't get their offers early, and they're wondering where their recruitment is going to be. But just the whole timeline shift with the portal now has been very significant.
Couple quick questions to the points you just made, which were excellent, Coach. Those 3 kids you brought in the portal, how many of them, if you sat down with them and had this conversation honestly and said, give me the truth, did you over pursue your ability? What would they say? Did you go for something that maybe was more than you were really capable of?
Two, two of them were D2 transfers, so probably not. That was just a different fit type of thing. But maybe with I think, and I don't want to just place the blame on the kid though, because you know how
Right.
that goes. We're talking about 17 or 18-year-old kid coming out of high school, very impressionable, right? And to a number of different ways with social media and everything. But you're looking at who's surrounding them and telling them, what level they should play at or where they should go or who should be recruiting them. What's mom and dad saying to them? What's their high school coach saying? What's their club coach? What's their trainer saying to them? There's so many different, I think for us, when we recruit these guys out of high school, I feel like every year there seems to be more and more people involved, in these circles that as a coach, you got to try to grasp, because if it's the uncle, if it's the local priest, if it's whoever it is, we got to have talks with them to let them know why we think that we could be a good fit for them. But these kids are listening to a lot of people, and quite frankly, they don't have a lot of time to just listen to themselves, and they're not developed yet to emotionally or mentally to be able to make a decision like that rationally, in my opinion. Like
Right.
it's tough to weigh that, all those different decisions. I got a daughter that's a junior in high school. She's not going to be playing sports in college, but we're going through the college decision process right now.
Yep.
And it's mind blowing, all the different avenues. And she's looking at what school looks cool on TikTok right now. So we're trying to rein that in. But I think there's so many different influences when a kid is looking at where to go in college. And it's tough because for us, right? So if we've got a mid-major Division I recruiting the same kid that we're recruiting, and they're obviously telling this kid, hey, you got a chance to play here. We love you. You're gonna be great. How would a kid not listen to that? Do we blame the misevaluation on these higher level coaches? Or so I think there's just so many factors involved there. And that's back to my thought on the benefit of the portal. Definitely don't want a kid that's has so many different influences on that decision, is not quite ready to make that decision, makes a decision, it ends up being a bad decision or the wrong decision. I think it's a good thing for that kid to be able to transfer and get to an appropriate level. And that goes both ways too, right? Where the kids are transferring up because they have a little bit of success. The kids are transferring down because they're not playing. There's so many different reasons these kids are in the portal. I think that I'm hoping that we can continue to enhance it and refine maybe some rules around it. I don't love the unlimited transfer thing. I got to do this every year depending on which way the wind blows. I think is setting them up for failure long term. But otherwise, I do think there's some benefits in those cases.
Yeah, at some point we have to get back to understanding that their brain is still developing, their future is still developing. We have to help them be in a situation where they can learn how to deal with conflict. They can learn how to deal with failure. Right. They can learn how to deal with disappointment. And if you're constantly jumping to the next best thing, you're never learning that skill set that you're going to need for life. So that's my biggest concern with it.
And that's why for us, when we get these high school kids, it's huge for us to educate them, their parents, on making a good decision. So when you do go choose UCCS, let's say, something bad is going to happen. Your girlfriend's going to break up with you. I'm going to yell at you one day. You're going to have a bad practice. You're going to struggle in a class. And yes, exactly to your point, it's our job, in my opinion, to surround these guys these young men with the resources, with the love, with the caring, with like we try to get our staff meeting with them regularly. We want to get ahead of any of these failures. Everyone's going to fail. That's great. That's what we want because now we've got them in our system, in our program, in our family, and we're able to help them push through that. And so I think all the more reason to surround these kids and put your arm around them when they get to campus and help them throughout the process so that they can develop the tools necessary to be able to push through. So they're not just saying, forget this, I'm going to some other school, because there could be the same problems there, or maybe different problems, but similar levels. So I think that much more refocus we're putting on when we get these young guys of really just helping them, supporting them through this thing so that they can make it through those tough times. So they're not, so the first thing in their head isn't, oh, I got to transfer out here. No, let's push through this. Let's learn from it. Let's get better from it. Let's enjoy the process.
I love that, Coach. I think that's so important. I think kids struggle understanding that the difference between their present reality and what their potential is could be as great as the Grand Canyon. Yes, we recruited you because we see that potential, but where you are right now, you don't know where to be 2 passes away from the ball. You're not consistently closing out with everything you've got. So we can't have you on the floor when you don't block out consistently, when you're not running your route properly, when you're not picking your man up earlier and pressuring the ball. You've got to learn to do that. And that's a work ethic growth. That's an understanding of the X's and O's and how you want to play. So I love that you guys are making that a point of emphasis. I know you're only bringing in a couple of high school kids every year, and I would be too. I'd be in the same boat. And I remember when I was at Maryville, we transitioned into the Great Lakes Valley Division II, and every game we were playing against a Division I transfer. Western Kentucky had a 6'11 center out of Iowa. Southern Indiana had a 6'5 shooting guard that was freshman of the year in the Big Ten the year before. So I know what you're facing every year. What do you tell these families? If you're on a stage and there's 300 families and they all have these big dreams, how do we talk to these parents and these kids to understand what they're up against, being 18, going up against kids that are 23, 24? You have to pick some of those kids that are 23, 24 over 18, or you're not going to be able to compete in the RMAC. So how do we educate those parents before they get into that decision-making position?
First thing we always recommend, any chance we do to get in front of the parents, is we beg them to attend a practice, attend a game. And we've got a division, we're in town, we got Air Force Colorado College, right? So we got Division III, Division II, and Division I. Go watch them all play, go watch them all practice, and sit as low as you can so you can see the size and everything. And I think really a lot of it is that they just don't know, because so many times these parents maybe they're watching March Madness or the NBA and they're like, okay, they'll be rational to that level. Okay, maybe Timmy can't play in the league yet. Maybe my son is not quite good enough to start for UConn.
Right.
But so I think they see that because they're watching those games, but that's all but they think he can't go to the league and he can't play for UConn, but that means he definitely should be able to play Division II or Division III or low-level Division I or whatever. And I don't think they really understand the levels. And I don't think they understand that within each level, there's grown men. And we won 5 games Derrick's freshman year. And we had Alex Welsh, who was another impact freshman for us. And we had a young roster. We had some older guys, some returners, but the balance of our power was young guys. And they're going against seniors, and they're going for every shot fake, and they're getting their butts knocked on the ground when they, drive to the paint, and it's not getting called. And so it takes a while for these guys to develop. And that's where we look for balance of classes. Like, we want to be able to have some good young talent, but we also need to be able to have some grown men, some experience. But I do think that to be able to really conceptualize that, you need to see it. Because I think people tell them, but until you see it, sometimes you're right, seeing is believing for some folks. And I think a lot of parents, and quite frankly, a lot of young kids need to, we run elite camps. I think those are great because we're going to get after it a little bit with these kids. Like, we're not just trying to showcase them and let them play live. Like, we want to work with them a little bit, and we want to see them get coached, and we want to hit them with the pad a little bit. And I think that's another great equalizer as well, is going to some of these elite camps and these different levels and seeing, because now all of a sudden maybe you're getting some out of state guys. I think, you know, Colorado for us, we get some kids that don't leave the state enough. And I think these parents need to realize that, the kids need to realize that there's a lot of good basketball going around the country, and there's a big difference between being 18 and being 23, especially when you're getting in the college weight room for 3 or 4 years.
I agree. Coach, I want for you and I to have a conversation and not really talk hoops and X's and O's. I'd be failing myself and anybody that's listening, because I love the way you coach and I love how you teach on the floor. I want to talk a little, I want to merge the two conversations. You don't have the NIL money right now, which most Division IIs do not, but you're still trying to get that Division I kid. And we've seen this for forever, for as long as basketball's been around. There's always been these powerhouse conferences, powerhouse teams. And what's come out of it is really the greatness of basketball. We get to see a Pete Carrill, who doesn't have all the athletes, develops a system where he doesn't have to have kids that play above the rim. He can beat teams with cutting and backdoors. I remember what Joe Scott did at Air Force. I'm sure you did too in the national tournament. The Loyola Marymount years. What do you, and I'll stage this, I know UConn had, 3 kids go in the first round last night, 2 in the top 10. But what Danny Hurley's doing with offense and defense, to me, has gotten me excited about being on the floor coach again. Just the movement and the kids reading the defense and reacting and the vision. What are you finding yourself doing, and how are you growing as an X's and O's coach, knowing that you're probably going to be going up against teams with more athleticism than you have and more size and more skill? What are you finding yourself doing with that?
Yeah, we've developed quite a bit over the years with the direction that we're heading. There's some staples that have remained constant for us: pass on good to get great, 1001 decisions with the ball. We really try to recruit unselfish guys. We run a motion offense, and how we've morphed that a lot over the years is we've run what I call a high post motion, so opener delay set. So we're recruiting some more skilled bigs that can turn and face a little bit. We've had luck with bigger guards. We tend to post our guards or our wings more so than our bigs. And so we're motivated a lot by what we see going on at FIBA. And you see a lot of it creep into high levels of Division I college basketball, obviously some in the NBA as well. NBA rules are so different. So it's, what I like to steal from a lot of teams, the handful of teams in the NBA, but we really try to watch some FIBA basketball.
Yeah.
We've had a number of guys signed to play overseas as well. And we've had a number of conversations with club coaches that will comment on how similar our style is. And so it helps these kids when they're going overseas to play. We've got a few over in Europe now, and we've actually had 11 over the last 7 years sign pro deals. So
that's remarkable. Wow.
We're heavily influenced by that, and I think that's right that a lot with a lot of these skilled bigs that can turn and face, get into DHOs, chase scenarios on the perimeter, be a hub. And Will Becker, who's an athletic sort of rim running, shot blocking 5, has done a great job of morphing into that hub position to where he's not going to shoot the lights out, but man, he's really got great tendencies to get that ball reversed, to get to some screening situations, to get to some get actions on the perimeter. And it really frees things up. It really opens up the paint. And I think a lot of that for us over the years had been with bigs. It's tough to recruit bigs. Bigs are always getting recruited typically above where they should land. And are we going to get a dominant big that we want to throw the ball into on the blocks? Maybe not. Are we going to get that athletic 6'10" dunker spot guy? Maybe. But we definitely have been able to get that hub spot, that guy that can play at the top, open it up for our other players for curl cuts, backdoors, punch opportunities, and we've had some great success with that. So we're constantly evolving with it, though. We're going on a foreign tour this summer, and I'm so excited because we get 2 weeks of practices with these guys in the summer, right? So 10 practice dates, and we're meeting now on We got a few new guys that we think will be part of the rotation. And so we're trying to figure out, we're not going to just go out and want to run the same stuff. Like, how do we want to tweak it maybe a little bit based on personnel and try to stay nimble on our feet to take advantage of the skill sets that we'll have on the roster this year. We're morphing to that open, that delay stuff. We're doing some different things defensively. This year for us, ball screen defense, I think we'll be able to enhance because I think we've got some more switchable pieces that gives you some different options. So, but yeah, I think for us, year to year, especially when you're getting a few transfers in, right? Like we want to make sure we're looking at how are we using their skill sets. Do we want to add some different actions? And within our motion, where do we want these guys getting touches? And then I think another thing too that I've been diving into this last year and a half or so a lot more is just different lineups, right? Like lineup plus minuses. And I joke with my staff, I grew up a hockey fan too, growing up in Michigan. And so my dad played hockey until he was 60, I think. But you have different lines and specialized lines. And we certainly have had that. We'll have a small ball lineup that can do some things, and we'll maybe a pressing lineup. But trying to look into some other ways to enhance that because I think we'll have some good depth. Those are things we're trying to continue to develop.
That's really fun. What's it take for a new kid coming into your program? Let's say they're 18 years old. What is the learning curve on average to really learn your system and get comfortable and figure out their role? What does that learning curve look like?
It's typically that following spring, coming out of that first season. And so this is whether they redshirted or not. But that's the other piece. We've made a living off of redshirting guys too. And I don't know, we're questioning that, our ability to do that so much in the portal age. I guess that's a different, again, extended conversation on the portal.
Right.
How much time and energy do you want to spend with a redshirt year to make sure you can keep these guys? But regardless of redshirting or not, we typically have seen it on the turn side of that first season. So you start getting into February, March, and it's fun to see because a lot of times you got these guys on that third team and all of a sudden they're winning a lot of the games in practice and they're just playing a little bit closer to how we feel they'll play. I think the key too is keeping them motivated when it gets ugly because we tell them it's going to be ugly early. Stop worrying about playing your game and just worry about defending and rebounding. Everything else will catch up. But I think sometimes guys get frustrated because it does take a little bit, especially for high school and even for transfers, right? If you've been to one or two other spots and learned a different system,
yep,
there's still going to be a transition. Now, ideally, you're a little older and as a transfer, maybe you can adapt better, but it's still going to be a transition. And that's why, again, we come back to this class. We got 3 transfers with multiple years because you get these 2-year transfers and it's tough for them because maybe after that first year, they're like, okay, I get it. When they go into that second year and they feel good, you got 1 year out of them.
That's right.
So that's something that we have to get better as a staff, in my opinion, the onboarding process for these guys. Like it's tough for us not being able to have them in the summer. What can we do to get them better acclimated, especially if it's a short-term transfer? You get a 1-year guy or a 2-year guy, like you really want that. Obviously a 1-year guy especially, but you want them to pick it up as quickly as possible. And when you run an motion offense, that can take some time. Shot selection and where and when are you going to get your shots? How's that ball supposed to move? It can take a while.
Yeah, I always use the analogy with boxing. A young boxer doesn't realize their potential until they've been punched in the face enough to realize I can handle being punched in the face and I can go. It's like the bad guys in movies that somebody throws just a murderous punch at them and they know, oh, that was just a little kiss. Older guys have learned that. They've learned to get knocked down and say, that's all right. Knock me down again. I'm all right. I know how to get back up. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
It takes time.
Yeah.
The other side of what you're doing, and you touched on it a little bit, how do you get those young guys to acclimate to your culture? How do you get them to buy into your brotherhood? Because they're coming into a group of guys, 9, 10 guys that have been there. They're comfortable. They know where the cafeteria is. They've got friends already. They know what professors to take and which ones not to take. How do you acclimate young guys when they come into your program? How do you help them integrate into that culture?
The best way is to have strong returners. That's the number one thing is, your upperclassmen, or doesn't even have to be upperclassmen, but your returners. Your returners should have a firm grasp of what's expected. Your returners should have a firm grasp of what kind of culture we have, what kind of culture we want, what went wrong or what went well this last year, and how are we trying to learn from that as a group and be better this year. And then what is your role going to be with these newcomers to get them up to speed? And so we really like to challenge our returners on that. Be a part, be an instrumental piece of that process. And that's some of it's on-court stuff. A lot of that's off-court stuff. It's in the locker room. It's inviting them over to the house or to the apartment. It's just spending time. It's putting your arm around them. It's giving them a nudge. It's telling them, we got to leave this party now. It's making good decisions on and off the court. And so as best as we can prepare our returners, that's going to be chief number one factor of onboarding the new guys. And then from there, we put our staff on a number of different things. And we meet regularly with our new guys, and we're checking in on them on everything. How's the roommate situation? How are the classes going? How's basketball going? Like all these things. And we're just having conversations. And so some of it is going to be by error, like they're going to learn a lot early on. I think holding them accountable early in the process is huge. We're going through right now much paperwork we got to have these guys fill out in the summertime between compliance and sports medicine, and now we're trying to get on this foreign tour, and so we got all this stuff, and so to teach them little things about how to respond and what's an appropriate time manner to respond, and how do you get your stuff done, because you're leaving the nest, and so I think that can be a shock sometimes, especially for the high school kids, to really get up to speed with just being accountable and doing things on your own, personal responsibility, creative problem solving. These are things that are really at the core of learning early on. And so all that blends into the whole culture building, because it all matters. Everything they do matters, and everything they do is directly related to our culture. And so the more that we're able to help them with that early on, the better off we're going to be down the road.
I saw a great quote the other day. It was from Winston Churchill. It was, the difference between mere management and leadership is communication. And I always think about me as a young coach, and I see this a lot at the high school level, where coaches will talk to their upperclassmen, got to be a better leader, got to be a better leader, but then they never give them the tools to be the better leader. And it sounds like you guys really make that a centerpiece of what you do. How much of that leadership conversation is coming within the flow of practices where you're talking to the upperclassmen about, hey, this is what we need from you? And how much of it is coming in individual conversations with them, where you're pulling them aside, or maybe they're in your office for a meeting, or you're asking them to stay after practice and you're saying, hey, I want you to try this with this group of guys or this individual. I think they need this from you. How much of that is going on?
Yeah, it's both. In practice, for sure, we try to find moments to get aside, like maybe grab a senior in a slow moving practice and just ask them or challenge them, is this the type of practice you want to have for your senior year? It's the more we can enable these guys and empower them to have voices. And sometimes they're hesitant, right? They're like, they don't really know. I'm like, hey, I'm giving you this opportunity. We're giving, and sometimes we'll mandate it right in practice. Hey, you're running this drill, or hey, you're running this practice, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes I try to back off from hopping on a kid or a young kid, and instead I'll pull over one of our veterans and say, hey, you need to go let this freshman know that this is what we do. And so just trying to find ways to empower their voices, and just we're trying to let that sink into these guys to grasp, this is your team. It's not my team. You know what I mean? There's no individual in here that's more important than another. So what are we trying to do here? And you guys are here for you only got another year or another 2 years or whatever it is. What do you want this to look like? And we got a lot of competitive guys that want to win and want to win championships, and challenging them and empowering them, I think, is huge. And then sometimes those conversations definitely have to happen off the floor. Some guys, in the heat of the moment, it's tough to get through to them, but you can have more thorough conversation at over lunch or after practice, or when you bring them back after they shower or something like that, to where, and that's where you have a lot of light bulb moments too, because in the heat of the moment, they think I'm crazy or they think something's wrong. And then you have that conversation. They're like, oh, okay, coach, that totally makes sense. But then it's not going to happen right away. We got to work with a lot of young coaches that they're so frustrated. Hey, we told them to do this and they're not doing it. I'm like, welcome to parenting. So we got to keep at it. Like
That's right.
Coach Showalter is a big mentor of mine, and he's always challenged U.S. basketball coaches like, hey, if anything going wrong on the court, it's your fault as a coach. So what are you going to allow? What are you going to enable? Just to tell a kid to do something doesn't mean all of a sudden he's going to do it. How did we tell him to do it? Did we show him how to do it? Are we conscious of how he learns? Did we give him an opportunity for trial and error? We have to be more creative as coaches to not get to the point where we just blame the kid. I've tried and he can't get it. Let's keep trying. Let's be creative. And again, back to creative problem solving, I think is the number one trait as a coach as well, to be able to sort through this and get through to these kids. But I think it can be frustrating at times, but we're really just teaching here. And I think keeping that in mind, the big picture of what we're doing over this process, like it's more than just basketball, and these kids are young and they're still figuring it out.
We talk about the portal and kids jumping from school to school. I think it's just as important that a guy like you, who's been at Colorado Springs for such a long time now, you've got a foundation now. You've been able to learn and grow and develop a staff and have consistency. Every time you go to a new school, all that changes. You may think I'm going to bring my system and bring my culture, but it doesn't happen overnight. So the fact that you've been there and you've been able to grow this program, I think is really impressive. And it's fun to hear, Coach. Coach, I know you're fighting off a cold, so I'm not going to keep you much longer, but I'd like to finish with giving you the opportunity to give a piece of advice to recruits and young gals and guys that are trying to play at the college level. I like to finish every podcast with that. What do you tell these kids that are going through the process now? They're 16, 17, they got huge dreams, they've got huge aspirations. What advice do you give them to help them pursue playing for somebody like you or playing at a UC Colorado Springs? How should they go about it?
That's a good question. I think advice I give out a lot is for kids to cast a big net, first and foremost. I think sometimes kids will say, I want to play in this conference, I want to play for this school, and they don't understand how selective it is. They may be good enough, but for any given class, we may have 2 to 4 spots available. And what is the likelihood of us to need that position and to, especially now, to be able to afford to bring a high school kid in at that position? So I may have a spot at the point guard spot, but we need a transfer. We need someone that can play ready because something happened with our other point guard. He hit the portal or he got hurt or whatever. I would need a starting point guard. So I think understanding how selective it is and casting a big net, and whatever level you think you're at, it's okay to include higher or that level, but don't be afraid to cast a bigger net to some lower levels as well. And I think that standing out with an email, having a nicely written contact email is good. You got to be persistent with it. Getting to elite camps is good. I always joke about elite camps. I always feel like guys go, talking about the appropriate level, like more often than not, you'll have guys at an elite camp that probably should be playing at a level below that school. And so I think a lot of times they want to go to the top Division I elite camp or all the Division I elite camps. And I'm looking at these elite camps and it's filled with D2 or D3 kids. And so that's not going to help you. Now, sometimes the Division I's will open it up for D2 or D3 coaches to come and recruit at their elite camps, and that might help you. But I think being honest and casting a big net is huge. And then I think having some patience, especially knowing that the timeline with the portal has changed. You got high school kids still getting recruited into the summer after they've graduated. I think keeping in mind prep school, junior college, all these things are on the table as well. I just feel like so often a kid will have their mind made up of what they do or don't want. If you want to play college basketball, you may need to be a little bit more flexible. And then on top of all the advice we give them about just working their tail off, right? And getting on a weight program early and keeping your grades up and responding to coaches. I think that's the other thing too. I think sometimes kids get overwhelmed or they'll not be great at responding. And then that coach gets the next job at maybe a school that you really want to go to. And oops. But I think for a number of reasons, it's good to respond and to keep those communication patterns open because especially with the portal, so many times these high school kids, there's a good chance they're going to end up at an inappropriate level. And so you want to keep all options open. Don't burn any bridges.
Fantastic, Coach. It's great advice. And anybody that hears it, hopefully they absorb that because it's really the pinnacle of what you're doing. And if kids will listen and families will listen, there's a place for a talented kid. There's a place for a kid with good grades that wants to work hard. It may not be Division I and Division II. It may not be NAIA, but you can have a great career somewhere if you're patient and you're willing to look everywhere. So I love it. Your time today I'm extremely appreciative. I love what you're doing. I haven't been down and watched a game and a practice a couple of years. If you'll have me, I may sneak down and watch you guys play this.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Open door. Just let me know.
I'd love to come down and watch. It's been a while, but thanks for all you're doing. Good luck. Where are you going overseas? Where are you headed?
Australia, New Zealand.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
I love it.
2 weeks out there in early August, so we're excited about it.
I'm definitely going to touch base with you in September. I want to hear how that goes. That's my wife and my dream vacation that we want to go to Australia and New Zealand.
Nice.
Spend a couple weeks. So I'll get some feedback from you.
Absolutely.
Good luck this year. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate it, Coach.
Appreciate it.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Significant Coaching Podcast that is available audio only wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank my great guest, Coach Jeff Culver. He's another humble, good guy in the game. He gets his teams ready to battle each year in the very competitive Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and the many golden nuggets he threw my way. I'm Matt Rogers. Thanks for listening. Have a significant week. Goodbye until next time.